Posted by you/dad advice 8. I, 42M, want to cut my mill out of mine and my son's, 17M, life after she expressed her concerns about my parenting. I, 42M, am considering cutting my mill out of my life after she expressed some concerns about the way I'm raising my son, 17M. I'm a single dad. My wife died when our son was 3 years old, and it's just been the two of us. My late wife's family has been a part of our lives ever since pretty much, and my mill and I have had a relatively good relationship until now. She did make some occasional comments about some things I did with my son, but it was nothing too serious, all things I was able to ignore or take lightly. My son came out as gay about a year ago. I am totally fine with this. He's allowed to love whomever he chooses. Although, it was a little surprising at first, he's a smart kid and I trust him to make the right choices. He and his boyfriend seem very happy together, so of course his happiness is all I can ask for as a parent. We kept his coming out between us for some time, entirely his choice, no one pressured him to do this. My side of the family knew, but he was a little bit wary about telling his mom's side of the family. They're a very conservative Christian family, and their views don't exactly align with ours. Nonetheless, he chose to offhandedly mention his boyfriend to them, and oh, the lashing I got from my mill. I won't repeat everything she said for the sake of my own anger, and I don't get angry often. She just said a lot of nasty stuff, not to him, thankfully, about the way he's being raised, like I should be ashamed of him and not encouraging this behavior. She even went as far as suggesting some sort of conversion therapy for him, and that was the last straw for me. Long story short, I don't want him to be subjected to the things she says or have her do something without me knowing, as he is still young and pretty impressionable. He's just starting to figure out who he is, and I don't want his grandmother to ruin this for him. This is the happiest I've seen him in a while, so I've been considering cutting her out of our lives. Some of my family members think this a bit extreme over one thing, but I don't believe so. My son and I are very close, and I don't want him thinking that I'm okay with/tolerate this kind of behavior, especially from his grandmother. So, I'm a little bit torn on the matter. I don't want to act impulsively, but I also don't want my son to think that he isn't important to me. Now on to update 1. First off, I'd like to thank everyone for their advice. I didn't get the chance to respond to any of them before the post was removed, but know that I read them all and appreciate it. So, I, 42M, took the advice of some users to talk to my son, 17M, about his grandmother, my mill. I wasn't exactly sure how to go about it because, naturally, I didn't necessarily want to bring up anything too hurtful that she'd said, but he is old enough to know what's going on and be part of the decision. I started off by mentioning some of the concerns my mill had about him coming out to her and him having a boyfriend, and I made it perfectly clear that whatever we chose to do next was going to be as a team. He seemed disappointed, but not surprised at his grandmother's reaction. He admitted that she'd already tried to coerce him into therapy behind my back. Although there is no reason for him to have to change to suit her needs, I made it very clear to him that it was never going to be an option, so he doesn't need to worry. I tried to keep calm throughout the conversation to make sure he knew that I was listening and that I was hearing everything he was saying. Thankfully, she didn't use colorful language with him, but he did express how he'd be uncomfortable being around his mom's side of the family, especially his grandmother, without myself or someone from my side of the family with him, out of the fear of what they might do or say. We ended up deciding to go LC/NC temporarily for some time. We haven't completely shot down the idea of going NC entirely, but he wanted to give her a chance to adjust to the new change and I was on board with this. Obviously, I set some ground rules with Mill, and we had an extensive conversation about her doing things behind my back. I mentioned to her that he will be telling me everything that she says, but her excuse was just that she was doing the right thing by getting him to do this, therapy. She's been given the chance to preserve a relationship with her late daughter's son, and it's her choice if she's going to let his sexuality get in the way of that, because at the end of the day it's not a phase, as she put it, and he's finally truly embracing himself. It's been some time since then, but my Mill hasn't shown much sign of change. Her stance on the matter is still the same. She's a pretty tough one to crack. She still tries to call from time to time, and the texting has gotten frequent. She's been sending my son loads of info about some of the programs he should look into. He's been deleting them almost immediately, and I think he's starting to feel like he can finally breathe again. After the initial post, I could feel that something was weighing down on him, and it was most likely the fact that Mill tried to coerce him into therapy. I've been checking in with him from time to time, but we've mostly been preoccupied with preparing for university, MITA. For now, I'd like to say things are well without my Mill, but it'd be even better if she'd stop trying to push her own agenda onto him. I hope she learns that if she wants to preserve a relationship with him, she needs to accept him for who he is. With that being said, it'd still be unfortunate for my son to not have any sort of relationship with his mom's side of the family since they're the last connection he has to her. So, any advice on how to get her to understand that this is not something that she, or someone else, can pray away? Or should we even bother and just go full NC instead? Now on to update 2. Some things first. 1. Again, thank you for all the responses on the previous post. Firstly, I'd like to apologize for how I addressed the conversion therapy on it. It is most definitely not therapy. No one should be subjected to something like that. Unfortunately, we do live in a conservative state where there are no laws against minors going through this. 2. I also wanted to address some people's suggestions of using this as a learning experience for him. He's in high school right now, he's been out to some people there longer than he has to me and has dealt with this like of stuff alone and is fully capable of doing so. Personally, I believe it'd hit a lot harder coming from someone who is supposed to love him unconditionally and his close family, rather than teenage boys who casually throw around slurs. 3. Some users suggested therapy, actual validating therapy, for my son, and with the surge in Asian hate lately and everything going on with our family, he has been talking to a therapist. He's pretty open about his feelings with me, so everything seems okay right now. His boyfriend, also best friend, is also a sweet guy and has been there for him. They grew up together, so they're pretty comfortable talking to one another. So, the last couple of days have been pretty packed. For now, my son, 17M, and I, 42M, have decided to go full NC with Mill for the sake of his mental health, especially before going off to a university like MIT. I don't want him to have to feel preoccupied with his grandmother's homophobia. He's fully aware that it's a decision we made together, and no one is blaming him for anything. The last thing Mill said to us was about his mother and how she wouldn't have allowed this. 100% not true. My amazing wife would have never allowed this. Our son was our mini, not so much anymore, miracle as she used to say. There wasn't much of a chance of her getting pregnant, but here we are now, and she wouldn't allow anyone to hurt him in any way. After that, some of my other in-laws decided to reach out now. Word travels pretty fast apparently. My Sil, 30s, reached out to tell us that we have her support, and Mill was definitely wrong for what she suggested. Some of his older cousins also reached out for the same reason, which made him feel a lot better about coming out. My Bill and some others were on Mill's side in the situation, so I didn't bother hearing what they had to say. We really don't need any toxicity in our lives right now, especially from people who aren't willing to change. We sent Mill some things she could read up on about what goes on in those therapy camps and about acceptance before blocking her. There's probably a 1% chance she'll actually look at the resources, but it's up to her now whether or not she wants to accept him for the amazing man he's growing up to be. Overall, I'm still navigating this whole single dad thing and trying my best to keep my son happy and healthy before he leaves for university. It'll definitely be a change I'll have to adjust to having him gone, but he's worked hard for this. TLDR, my son, 17M, and I, 42M, have decided to block Mill and go full NC for the time being. Mill doesn't seem like she's going to change her views on the matter, and my son doesn't need to be subjected to even more stress, especially with MIT. My Sil, 30SF, along with some other family members reached out recently just to say that he has their support.